Look, up in the sky. It's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's
your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Welcome back to the Watching Comics podcast. If you are listening to this, I'm assuming you listened to our last week's episode on Black Panther. It was off the hook, and we are here bringing you something not quite so fresh, but still recent enough that it matters. A couple months back, Jake and I recorded an episode for a different podcast project, and it was dedicated to all things Spider-Man Homecoming, as well as ranking the Spider-Man flicks we have been given so far and the respective Peter Parkers as well. So we wanted to go ahead and travel back in time just a couple of months and repackage this a little bit and give it right back to you for those of you that have missed it, because we felt like it was worthy enough for you to hear. And if you've heard it once before, go ahead and listen to it again, because you know that Jake and I are right on almost everything we're sharing. Anyway, here it is. First, we are going to talk about Spider-Man Homecoming. I saw it on last Friday night, and I know that you saw it a couple of days ago. And I've been saving all of my stuff. I haven't put anything on Twitters. I haven't said any real opinions about this because I wanted to talk to you about it. So, listeners, a little bit of context for you. You already know, if you're a regular listener of this podcast, that arguably the worst movie theater experience of my life was Spider-Man 3 with the emo. With the emo Tobey Maguire and the two musical numbers that were unnecessary. And I'm also going to bring into here the reason Jake is on this particular podcast is in my connection circles with all the people I know and all the comic book nerdery that I have access to. I will say Jake is the closest thing to a Spider-Man expert that I have a relationship with. So we're gonna get super real about this. And if Jake says something about Spider-Man Homecoming, you can take it to the bank. And if you don't like it, then you could just turn this off, you fat cats. Okay, so now that we've done that, Spider-Man Homecoming, give me your initial reactions.
Can I first say that I'm with you on Spider-Man 3? That,
yes.
I went in so psyched for that movie because I grew up with Venom as a villain.
The Venom cartoon character on the TV show from the 90s was phenomenal, and I was so stoked to finally see that on the big screen.
Yeah. And that movie was such a letdown. I mean, such a steaming turd of a film where, I left and it's I couldn't see color and, music
Black was white,
beautiful.
up was down, nothing made sense.
Right,
I saw it for free because I worked at the movie theater in town at the time.
You overpaid.
And I still wanted my money back. Exactly.
Yeah. So me, Spider-Man Homecoming, there aren't enough strong, good words for this movie. I loved this thing so much.
And how did you feel going in? Because I'll be honest, I'm not as deeply committed to Spider-Man as you are, and I've made it known that I see all the Marvel movies. Some of them are really, really good, but I'm a DC fanboy at heart.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
That's where my main allegiance lies. And I was not looking forward to Reboot Part 3 is what I was calling this for a long time. Because I thought it was unnecessary, but I was pleasantly surprised. So tell me what you thought about it going in, even before you saw it.
Going in, I shared some of your apprehension because, you've alluded to, Spider-Man that's my favorite. I have, as a comic book collector, I have a series of creators that I follow more than anything else, whatever they're writing. And then I have Spider-Man.
Yep.
And so, and the X-Men is usually a slam dunk, except once in a while. But, for the most part, it's, certain creators and whoever is writing, drawing Spider-Man, I'm in. And this has just always been for me, as a kid, it was my favorite character. As an adult, I've just loved some of the more mature stories. Going in, I had I was pretty hopeful just because Marvel Studios really seems to know what they're doing, right? They made a talking raccoon a star, right? And so
right.
They know what it's that SNL sketch where they've got Marvel can do no wrong, and it's the bus driver is going to save the world, and we're yeah, whatever, Marvel made it. And so
and we're going to go give it our money and we're going to smile.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really oh, okay, so I owe Marvel how much for my entertainment this year? And so I'm totally on board with them. I thought Tom Holland was brilliant in Civil War. I thought he stole the show in what was still a brilliant movie even without him. So I came in with that excitement. My apprehension was, first of all, like you said, this is the third go round in 12 to 15 years.
Yeah, it really, it seems like they all have just come on top of each other because I've seen Batman get rebooted, well, 3 times now in my lifetime, but it was over the course of almost 3 decades. Like that,
right.
That seemed like some breathing room. It was like Spider-Man is like, I remember being able to buy the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man on DVD. Like, so it doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
Well, and that's, I mean, like weird fact about me, after freshman year of college, I went back to my mom's house for the summer and fell asleep to either Spider-Man 1 or 2 every night. And so, I mean, but that's where we were, I mean, that was 12 years ago.
Yep.
Sheesh. But that's just 12 years ago where those were the only Spider-Man movies was 1 and 2. And we're like, gee, I wonder if they'll ever do the Lizard, and now we regret it. But, no, but so I had that apprehension. I'm like the one comic book nerd in the world that thinks Spider-Man should graduate high school.
Really?
Okay, so here's the thing.
Let's go into this. This was something I wanted to talk about. Hopefully we would get there. Was the concept of the first 5 movies. Yeah, the 2 different boots were just seemed like they couldn't go fast enough to get Spider-Man to grow up like that. They were hitting the fast forward button on those, and clearly Spider-Man Homecoming was like, what if we put Spider-Man in a John Hughes movie?
Yes,
and that seems to be the biggest disparity between the different reincarnations.
Yeah, and spoilers for my thoughts. I think they nailed it. So I'm not griping about the high school thing, but here's the thing is like, and we'll talk about this also with Watchmen a little bit, but like comic books have aged with their fans.
Yes,
sometimes well and sometimes not. And I think Spider-Man is both because like we're so hung up on this high school era. The core Amazing Spider-Man series that Stan Lee and Steve Ditko started in the 60s has over 700 issues now.
That's a lot.
That's so many, and I own maybe 100 of them. I'm not nearly where I want to be, right? But I got 2 kids. I got to feed them.
Priorities, man. It gets in the way.
I guess. No, but so there's there's over 700 issues of this thing. I think, and I'm spitballing here, but I think Peter Parker spent 30 of them in high school.
Wow.
And so we've got this like character that we won't let grow up. And we've got this idea in our head that Spider-Man is a high school character. And Spidey as a high school character is an awesome, awesome start. And there's some cool stories there. And there's been some cool stories told since, and Homecoming is one of them. But, there's just this idea Marvel has that Spidey has to keep de-aging to be relevant. But, for me, as a 31-year-old with 2 kids who identified with Peter Parker, the high school student 15 years ago, I kind of want to see Peter try to balance being a dad and being a hero, and I want to see him balance having a family and still doing the power and responsibility thing. And I think there's some stories that could be told we're not telling.
You're absolutely right. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think there's got to be this dance, like this balance that can be found, because I get like you have something like The Simpsons, which has been around since the dawn of time. But nobody has aged, but it works for them. But at the same time, like in order for it to work, I feel like they have to settle for a certain limit of juvenile nature to their humor. Whereas,
who on earth has said their favorite Simpsons season is number 22? Right? Like,
right? Exactly.
Everybody's living for those first 10 years,
and so I feel like in comic books, in order to raise the stakes, especially cinematically, to make stories just a little bit more emotionally attractive, you've got to be able to flirt with those lines of making it just ironically a touch more human. And I think that's the difference between taking something like The Simpsons and something like a comic book universe. But what I found really interesting was how much again, like I said, I was surprised at how much I loved the movie, but I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the high school play on it. And I think part of it was I was just programmed and this is part of just some of the bad nature of the earlier movies. I was programmed to think, oh, it's an origin story, so I'm going to see Uncle Ben die again. I'm going to see some of the same basic stuff, and then Spider-Man's going to get out of high school, and then he's really going to struggle because hashtag all the feels. I was pleasantly surprised at, one, how they handled a lot of those other details about how he got bit by the spider and how he's just answering all these questions to
Well, they
to
never
his best
said
friend.
Uncle Ben. They never said Uncle Ben's name once.
No, not once. And I liked that because it's
Yeah,
like
me too. I'm on
I
board.
lived through it twice, you know?
Zack Snyder, take note. I don't need to see Martha Wayne die again.
Exactly. So I think it was a delicious blend of, let's see how much entertaining age-like humor we can infuse into this, but also use it to our advantage to take a different style of storytelling and still give everybody all the pertinent information, because we still figured out practically everything we needed to in a relatively organic way about how this particular Spider-Man got to be this particular Spider-Man without following the formulaic, like, this is the dark point, this is the origin point, this is where things happen, it just seemed to flow in an organic way in the quirky little world that they created.
Well, and you hit on one of the things I loved about it. Is the Uncle Ben thing, because we need some background info on Doctor Strange as a culture. I get that. Mm-hmm. I'm the only person who's like, gosh, we're spending so much time on, I get that.
Exactly. Because there's only going to be 5 people in a movie theater screening that knows that much. Doctor Strange.
Exactly. Right.
Comic book sales were pretty low before the movie.
Oh, sure. That comic's been canceled like 20 times. And so no, but we don't, there are certain characters that are so much a part of our consciousness and our pop culture now that we don't need a rehash. I don't need to know, one thing that, as much as I love the Sam Raimi films, one thing I don't need to hear, great power, great responsibility anymore. I'm a fan of show me, don't tell me. I like films that's
interesting. Like, you actually want cinema to use its picture making capabilities to tell you a story.
Well, I like things that assume my intelligence, and they assume that I can draw themes out without having to have some poor old man get shot in the liver 16 more times while telling me.
This is why we're friends, Jake. Because, like I said, in so many episodes, when I talk about something that pisses me off or something that I love, it usually comes back to, like, screenwriting, and then this concept of, like, did they assume I was stupid or smart? And I'm like, I say all the time, like, I don't want shit spoon fed to me. Just, like, let me figure it out, man. Like, I'm an intelligent person. I will get it. I promise.
Well, and that's exactly, so you talk about the high school thing, what they did right. And again, I think what they did right doesn't have anything to do with high school other than how they navigated it. Is what matters isn't that Pete is a high school character. What matters is that when he does the right thing as Spider-Man, it hurts him as Peter Parker. And when he does the right thing as Peter Parker, it hurts him as Spider-Man. And that's the constant.
Boom. That's it. That's the key. Mm-hmm.
And so, like, that scene. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, so my follow-up question would be, another big thing that I took away from this film was Peter Parker wasn't, like, a bullied outcast, really, in this movie. Like, he wasn't, the way they try to set it up in some other movies or other cartoons and other comics and stuff like that. Like, he really, other than that one guy who was just kind of being a jerk to him, like, he wasn't a nerd because he was in a school full of nerds. He knew all the people, he had friends, he had a connection network, and everyone knew that he had an internship with Stark Industries. Like, he wasn't this outcast type character where we're rooting for an underdog because he gets spitball shot at him too.
Well, and I thought oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I thought Spider-Man usually carries that sort of sense with him in the early going, and they kind of foregoed that, don't you think?
I think what they did is they updated it well, because, like, it's not 1965, the bully is not some guy in a Letterman jacket giving out noogies and wedgies. And, like, bullying,
those were the days.
Right? Yeah. Jake Owens circa 2002. No, the bully is the social bully. You've got, like, Peter isn't this guy in the corner that no one will talk to because of the size of his glasses. He's this guy that there's a kid launching a constant harassment campaign on him, and Flash is, like, on him wherever he goes. mocking him and trying to run him down. And I thought that it was, you know, now we're getting into the whole youth work thing that I do, but like, I thought it was a way more modern look at bullying and what it is. Definitely. And as a result, I mean, but it fleshes the character out. It makes Peter so much more identifiable to see him get real bullied and than to see him get this 1950s Leave It to Beaver version of bullying. And exactly. Yeah, so I'm all in on that. You know what I thought? The scene that really drove it home for me for the look don't tell or show don't tell was the homecoming scene when he's got Liz, what's her name, is like waiting on him, the girl he's been trying to get, and she's waiting on him in. Oh yeah. Oh, I should shut up, right? Spoilers?
Yes. Okay, we're talking about spoilers right now. Spoiler. Hit the 15-second button a couple of times. All right, now go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, but at least that wasn't a big one. No, but so he's got the girl waiting for him at the homecoming dance, and he's got that. He walks back in and he's like, "Hey, you deserve better than this. I'm sorry, I gotta go." That was the moment. That was our great power, great responsibility moment right there.
Exactly.
And we didn't need to see whatever famous old guy is playing him this year bleeding out in the street to tell us that, because they built a credible character that expressed it through his choices.
And we didn't need a quick little like flashback where we hear it echo in his head through a voiceover of some kind. And
yeah, exactly.
And the other thing that was beautiful about that point, and this is the nerd of me, like I'm a writer, I have some stories that have been published, and I continue to try to do that. I want that to be a big part of my career as I conjure stories. And what I loved from a writing standpoint was that key linchpin moment came after what I considered to be the best scene in the entire movie. Immediately after it, like the whole, more spoilers coming ahead. The best scene I thought in the whole movie, and the tension that built between Holland and Keaton in that car, I thought was masterful. And then that key moment, like you said, of show me, don't tell me, of I have to choose the right thing for the greater good and the greater amount of people right now. Like that moment came right after what I consider to be the most emotionally charged scene. And I just think from a storytelling standpoint, putting those two things together gives you a pillar for the narrative entire, a point where you can hang your hat on it and say, holy crap, was that a really good turning point, and it ramped things up and it made sense for us to go where we went to after that, instead of getting this moment of like, with great power comes with great responsibility, and then an hour and 45 minutes later you realize, oh, now he gets it.
Well, yeah, and you know what, also, can we talk about how freaking awesome was Michael Keaton and was the Vulture in general?
It was like he took his character from Birdman and decided to like take it seriously again and put it in Spider-Man and did all the right things with it.
Also, the meta trip that is Batman becomes Birdman becomes the Vulture.
Beautiful.
Is like, my head was spinning.
And he was chewing gum in a couple scenes. I want Michael Keaton to come out with his own brand of gum. Like, what do we have to do to get that? I want Keaton gum. So I want to touch on that too. The villain thing was a key turning point for me. Now, I'm not as high on the Marvel universe as you are. Like you earlier called Captain America Civil War a brilliant movie. I would disagree, but it was entertaining. So I want to say what I loved about the Keaton feature was, to me, it felt like for the first time in a great deal of movies. Now, I'm excluding Deadpool. Deadpool's the greatest thing Marvel's ever done, but it's not really part of the Avengers thing.
Yeah, it's a Fox thing.
Exactly. So I'm going to say, outside of the Deadpool movie, which is a unicorn, I felt like this was the first time in a while where I finally got a villain that was worth my chops.
I'm not just going to say in a while. I might say ever. Like,
because I'm tired of Loki. They're bleeding the Loki horse dry, and Tom Hiddleston's a phenomenal, well-versed actor.
Yeah, who doesn't love them some Tom Hiddleston? Yeah,
but it's like Loki's been around for like 7 movies, guys. Like, come on, cut the cord.
Right,
like,
yeah.
Kill him or make him good.
He might be good, but he chose to be bad. We get it. Yeah.
And then like I thought Ultron was awful. I thought Winter Soldier was pretty good, but then that's not really like a traditional villain. I thought Red Skull was great, but we're talking like Red Skull's like 7 years ago.
Well, and then you've also got Hugo Weaving. You know, there's rumors, but for the most part, we're pretty sure he's not coming back. Yeah. And so you've got one of the best villains in Marvel's canon that, you know, they can't go back to.
Exactly. And I thought Doctor Strange, I thought, was slightly better than mediocre. But
I liked the ending a lot on Doctor Strange. Exactly. I liked that we moved beyond punch something in the name of justice, and he had to make a sacrifice and make some choices and outthink the villain. I liked that.
Okay, so with Doctor Strange, which I thought was better than the middle of the pack, even then the villain was still lacking just a touch, because the main villain of that narrative is going to be Chiwetel Ejiofor, who's going to come around later, right, in more of that form. So I guess basically to say all of that is I've been sorely missing the like, I guess this, maybe if it sounds sadistically, I've been sorely missing like the good actor giving me a satisfying villain performance.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think Keaton nailed that. Like, but I mean, because okay, spoilers and
spoilers.
Okay, so yeah, no, so I mean, you can argue, and I would, in fact, I'm about to, believe it or not, but you can argue that
it's happening.
Yes, you can argue that Keaton was formative on Spider-Man because he's got that little monologue in the middle. Well, I guess it's towards the end where he's like, the big guys aren't looking out for us. We got to take care of ourselves. And you get this sense in that final scene where Peter Parker turns down being an Avenger. You get this sense that like that moment spoke to him, and that he kind of got his calling from that. And you get this unspoken, again, showing, not telling, you get this unspoken respect between Adrian Toomes and Peter Parker, where they're like, and he's not going to reveal Spider-Man's identity in prison. And he is going to look out for the kid a little bit. And there's just this sense that like, I could see some average guy get, in that situation pushed. I mean, average people did crazier things when they voted for Trump, I mean, so like we got like, so I could totally see some average person putting on a vulture costume and stealing things. Exactly. And it was the most believable villain, the most identifiable villain. I didn't want him to win, but I wanted him to be okay. I'm pulling for the guy in a weird way.
Exactly. I think it was a wonderful battle of the everyman. I think Mike, he represents an everyman. He's a working class guy who gets hamstringed by the system. He wants to take matters into his own hands, and every single reason he gives for why he does what he does makes sense, and I would normally say amen to, but the difference is Spider-Man is that teenage everyman, and he's encapsulating the everyman in the sense of I'm trying to protect the everyman, whereas Michael Keaton is like, I'm trying to be the representation of the everyman and make it myself so then other people can see that the working guy can make it. And the selfishness eventually becomes the bigger priority rather than sticking to ideals, and that selfishness is what costs him something, is what makes him villainous, whereas Spider-Man says, I'm not going to stay at homecoming with the girl, I'm going to go and try to save the people instead, that sort of thing. And that's the difference between the two, but because they're so stinking similar, and I'm not about to say that these two movies are on the same plane, but in this particular light, that's one of the reasons why I love the movie Dark Knight Rises so much, was because all of the rhetoric that Bane was spilling in that movie was stuff that I agree with philosophically. And I was finding myself rooting for him every once in a while in that movie. And it wasn't unlike a lot of the stuff that Batman believed in. But at the same time, it's like after a while it comes to a head and you have to choose, like, are you going to try to kill people to prove a point, or are you going to try to save people to prove a point?
Yeah, I mean, there's almost like I'm going to go even next level. And I'm going to compare this. I mean, there's almost like a Victor Hugo thing going on there with like this idea of the noble poor and the evil poor. And like, how do you respond to your circumstances? And there's this very real, and I think, this is a phrase that is just getting beaten to death today, but it's true. There's a very appropriate for our times, way of looking at, it speaks to us right now as we are as Americans, this idea that like, okay, things are not going how you expected them to. What are you going to do about it? Does that drive you to do these bad things or these good things?
And that's what makes Keaton, what made Vulture such a great character, is even though we didn't get it's a comic book movie, we didn't need a ton of expository details, but it made sense. He was a guy that was working hard. He was putting together his own business. He was trying to do the American dream, and then he gets hamstringed by the man. And that's something that I think on one level or another, a lot of people can identify with, or at least can say is easy to follow.
Yeah, for sure. No, I will say, and this is actually one of the things I've been pondering since I saw the movie. I will say I think I'm going to go ahead and rank it as my favorite Marvel movie villain so far.
Boom.
Yeah,
That
I mean, I think that there was depth to it. It was well done. Overall, I'm going to put Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm going to say Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is Marvel's best movie, but Spider-Man Homecoming is my favorite movie they've done.
That's fair. I totally get that delineation. And I think I'm with you with putting Keaton villain-wise towards the top. I think Keaton definitely cracks my top 2 for sure. He may be number 1. Like I've got him up there with Hugo Weaving as Red Skull. I'll have to maybe rewatch the first Captain America again to
now, you know who I liked that based on your last comments, I'm going to guess you didn't love. I really liked, what's his name from Inglourious Bastards as Zemo in Civil War. Like, I thought that like they took one of the weirder Captain America villains, because Zemo in the comics is like, his name is Baron Zemo, and his superpower is he wears a cape. Like he just has
cape.
I mean, he goes through, some days he's got power, some days he doesn't. He's got this weird, like almost Cobra Commander mask that he wears.
Daniel Bruhl.
Daniel Bruhl, that's it. Yeah, and it's like such a weird character. And they took it and they just totally threw out, they're like, thanks, Stan Lee, and just threw it out. And they did it right. And they gave us this in-depth character. I don't know. I thought the whole, like, he was going to tear down the Avengers because of his family. Like, I thought that was a pretty cool villain. I also like that Marvel's keeping their villains alive these days. Like, I hate, there's nothing I hate more than a character that starts to show a little potential and you enjoy the movie, and then they're just like, and he's going to fall off a building and die. And I get so sick of that. And I like that they're keeping the villains alive so that I have this chance of seeing the Vulture again, and Daniel Bruhl could be back as Zemo in the future. And so there's a lot to be said for starting to treat the villains as part of this universe as much as the heroes.
That's totally fair. I can meet you on that. I will say I still think Deadpool is the best movie that Marvel's put together, but it's not part of this like Avengers thing, and it's not completely part of X-Men. It's just kind of like we talked about. It's that unicorn. It's that flame up thing. But man, I fell in love with that movie. And actually, Rachel and I did an episode where we talked about the Oscars of this last year, and we took a good 5 minutes to argue why we thought Deadpool should have been nominated for Best Picture. Like we love that movie here on the Starving Critics. We love it. All right.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too.
So rock on. Well, I glad we feel similarly on Spider-Man Homecoming. So I was not expecting very much. I was blown away, really enjoy it. So two quick things on Spider-Man before we jump on to the next thing. So yes. One, I want you to rank for me real quickly, both your Spider-Mans and the movies. And
I'm so glad you did this.
And then I also want to touch on where do you think it might go, and what are you afraid they might do if they might not do it right?
Mitch, I could kiss you on the mouth right now for these questions. Thank you.
Hey, God bless the internet.
I told you this before we started recording, but I was a total complete tool about this in the theater. And I went like Tuesday nights around here. I don't know if this is everywhere now, but like here in Omaha, it's like $5 movies on Tuesdays. And my daughter was born Monday. She and my wife were still in the hospital on Tuesday. My son was being watched by my mother. And I said, I am going to this freaking movie, and I am going to I'm going to have a beer because it's a glorious new future where you can drink at the theater. I was like, I'm going to have a beer.
America.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to have a beer, and I'm going to sit in a dark room with no one crying, and I'm going to watch a film. And, so I went and saw it Tuesday, and all these people were like, I had a group of 12 people on my left and 5 people on my right, and I'm in the middle. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm here to review this. I'm here as a critic.
You got instant credibility. You've got to tear this thing to pieces.
I stopped just short of bringing a pad and taking notes, but
that's the next step.
Okay, so ranking the Spider-Man actors and ranking the movies, right?
Yes.
Okay, and am I allowed to give commentary? I won't take too much of the time.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, let's start with the Spider-Man actors. And this is not an indictment on him, but going worst to best. I'm going to go in order. I'm going to go Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland.
Okay, I completely agree.
Yeah, and I like Tobey. This is not a knock on Tobey. And I'll rank my movies, and you'll hear how I feel about that. But I just thought, as the genre has grown, so have the performances. And maybe Tobey Maguire, if he'd been cast in 2017, would have turned in a deeper performance because we expect more now. But that's how I rank him.
It's also hard to tell because Tobey Maguire's just very not good.
I think he got that part because he looks like Peter Parker, like you'd imagine.
I completely agree.
I don't even know that they had him audition. I think he sent in some headshots, and
Sam Raimi was like, what the hell? He can make out with Kirsten Dunst.
I can make an empire out of Evil Dead. I can do this. So I just think I think that was the way he looked. I think Andrew Garfield was good because he loves the character. He's a Spider-Man fan who I guess I think I've heard stories before that he wore a homemade Spider-Man costume to the audition.
Of course he did, because he's hardcore.
Right, absolutely.
He's that guy that really likes to go the extra mile and likes to get press about it.
Right. He went so far he dated Gwen Stacy in real life. And so I liked Andrew Garfield, but I think Tom Holland really caught the conflict of Peter Parker, the humor of Peter Parker. And at the end of the day, the driving force of the character was just that he's a good guy, and he's not a falsely good guy. Like, he's not glory seeking. He's not Tony Stark, who's trying to make up for a life of stupid decisions. He's just, and you get some of those themes in the movie. He's just a good guy. And Tom Holland captured that while still being the funniest Spider-Man. And so I'm all in on Tom Holland. That was part of what had me so excited for this.
I'm completely all in on that as well. And I wasn't expecting that. But I think Tom Holland just was simply the most believable.
For sure.
Of taking both personas. I thought I don't think you can take the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans for what they're worth. There may be some merits that are good about them, but I just don't think you can look at Tobey Maguire and say that there was any ounce of his performance that was like really believable. It was just very cartoony.
Yeah.
And I think Andrew Garfield was like, he was pretty good in the Spider-Man suit, but his Peter Parker was a little bit lacking because he was a little touch emo for my taste.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like Tom Holland was that really good of like, okay, I can do both of these, and I can do them both really well for what they're asking of me.
Yeah, and so I'll use that to segue into ranking the films. Part of the thing with Raimi's movies is that they were what we needed at the time. And they moved us forward. It took us from Batman and Robin, God help me. It helped us. Right, it helped us move from bat nipples and bat credit cards into, okay, maybe this is a legitimate form of entertainment. Maybe the average crowd can enjoy these characters. Maybe there's something to it. So I think there's a lot of importance to the Sam Raimi movies. I think there's a lot of value to them. But watching them over, 15 some odd years later, they don't always hold up.
Yeah, they're not going to have the shelf life. And what's really interesting is I've been finding on Twitter, in the internet movie Spider-Man comic book / realms of Twitter, there's an awful big group of people making noise about saying that they think Spider-Man 2 is still the best one out of all the movies that have been made. And
so that's where we're going to go with this. And I think that, and I'll get to that. So let me start with the worst, as you have alluded to and I have, is Spider-Man 3.
That is not only a disservice to humanity, but is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life, and I wouldn't wish a viewing upon that on any of my enemies. Yeah, it's it's just like, I own a copy of it, and I will tell you, I've never watched it. I own a copy for the reason why the United States still has nuclear weapons, because if I don't have this, someone else is going to have it, and I don't want someone else to have this, and so. The best part of that movie was the fact that Bryce Dallas Howard was gorgeous in it. Nothing else is a redeeming quality. The best part of that movie is it ended. I mean, it's like that movie. Gosh, I can't say enough bad about it. Like, from the casting of Topher Grace. I mean, when have we ever respected a man who chose Topher over Chris? Right. Like the casting of Topher Grace, the I don't know, the whole haircut, the no real haircut. Oh, that really commit. They didn't really commit to the Venom character. Like, they just kind of give a shout out to him. No, yeah. And I feel like Spider-Man 3 is what would happen if you asked the band My Chemical Romance to make a Spider-Man movie.
That is exactly right. Well, and it's like and then you had potential with Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman, but then you tried shoehorning it into the Uncle Ben story because, as I've said, apparently we just can't watch that guy die enough.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's just a bad movie, man. In the number 2 spot. Not number 2, what are there, 7 movies? So number 6. There's 6. There's 6 movies. So we're going to call out of 6 movies, Spider-Man 3 ranks 7th.
Yes, exactly.
And then we'll jump to 5. Amazing Spider-Man 2 has got its moments, and I've always really defended the casting of Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone.
I thought their chemistry was phenomenal.
Yeah, and I also think the death of Gwen Stacy is one of the spoilers for a 40-year-old comic. The death of Gwen Stacy is one of the most important moments in comic book history. So if you're a nerd like I am, then you know that like prior to that moment, comic books had just gotten silly. Batman had a rainbow costume in case he ever needed it. That's real. And then Gwen Stacy,
the rainbow.
Yeah, and so Gwen Stacy dies, and suddenly it starts what we call the Bronze Age of comics, where everybody's like, "Whoa, hold up, superheroes can fail. That's okay." And so
like real stories can be present in the narrative.
Yeah, and the craziest part of it is they add this sound effect to suggest that Spidey accidentally killed her trying to save her, right? And so it's this super dark moment for what is one of the most upbeat characters. And it really brings to life what would be Spider-Man forever, which is the meeting of really dark stories with this really hopeful, optimistic character. And it's such an important moment. And I
thought they did it well in the movie.
And they did it okay, but here's my problem. So now we're getting to the core of it. My problem with Amazing 2 is not actually the movie itself. It's that, and this is also my problem with Age of Ultron, is that Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a 2-hour ad for movies that never got made. And it's a long 120-minute trailer for a Sinister Six film that nobody was asking for, a Venom spinoff that they're apparently still going in on.
Tom Hardy's going to be in the Venom movie.
Right, which whatever. I mean, cool. I like Tom Hardy and I like Venom, but at this point, can it just be enough to have a good Spider-Man, you know? But so much time in Amazing Spider-Man 2 was dedicated to establishing this shared universe of Spider-Man films that we just don't need, you know? And I say that as somebody who has a giant Spider-Man fat head, and a comic book collection. We don't need those movies. And Amazing 2 could have been a decent movie.
And Amazing 2 was supposed to be that bridge into a third one. Cause there were a lot of reports. Shailene Woodley was cast
was going to be Mary Jane.
And she actually filmed an appearance for a few scenes in 2, and then they cut them and said, we're just going to make your story part of 3, and then they never made 3.
No, and I had heard a rumor that they actually cut them also because they were thinking about recasting her.
I didn't hear that.
I don't know
one,
if that's true.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. And so it'll be really interesting because here's the deal. Like we'll finish your list here in a sec, but like I really enjoyed The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and even at one point I said it was one of the better comic book sequels. But I also said that both really loving the comic book style that it was shot in. It was very fast. The framing was very good, and I love Paul Giamatti, and I liked his little cameo in it. But then I think Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone just had great chemistry, and I thought that Jamie Foxx did a great job. And I was also looking forward to that next installment to seeing where it led. And I thought I was all in on saying this was going to be the perfect setup for what was going to be a phenomenal third movie, and then it never happened.
Yeah, I and I defend the movie a little bit, but I'm not as high on it as that. But I think we're too hard on it, and I think that its real issues are the distraction of the shared universe. And I think if you take all that time that went towards establishing the shared universe and you put that energy into better fleshing out Electro as a villain, better giving me a more believable relationship between Harry and Peter to make that betrayal matter more, then I think that you've got a pretty decent movie on your hands there, and maybe we never get Homecoming as a result.
I can meet you there because one thing that I can honestly say as someone who owns this movie and I proudly defend it, Dane DeHaan was a flawless casting choice, and I feel like they wasted all of his talents because, like you said, they didn't build that up as much as they could have.
Yeah.
And as one of the best casting decisions they made out of those two movies, it was like, oh yeah, hit it out of the park with the casting, and then we're just going to settle for a double with what we've got on screen.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, you're exactly right. So I give Amazing 2 the number 5 spot. I'm gonna give Amazing 1 the number 4 spot. I thought Amazing Spider-Man 1 was only slightly better than 2. And again, it's just because it doesn't have that mixed up tone. Yeah. I didn't like the lizard in that one.
They should have recast it. Like,
yeah,
it had potential. And Rhys Ifans is a good actor, but he's not a Michael Keaton or a Heath Ledger. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like they really needed to swing for the fences on that one, and they just didn't. And I think if they put someone in there, like, I know he can't because he played Hulk in one single movie, but if and I feel like I suggest this all the time, but I think he can literally do anything. If they would have put like an Edward Norton in that character instead.
Well, and the thing is, like, the lizard's supposed to be a pretty tragic character. He's also supposed to be a father figure to Peter, and you got some hints of that in Amazing, but I think enough. If you're going to, and that's just it. If you're going to do the problem is you can't do the lizard and an origin story, and that's the issue with Amazing. Is it goes back to what we talked about. I don't need origin stories on these really, really present characters that we really know, and you know I think the lizard suffered from trying to squeeze in the origin story too. And if that doesn't happen, then I think they dedicate more time to the. So my issue with the Amazing movies is just trying to cram too much into too small of a time frame.
Totally. Just thought of another one. Gary Oldman. That could have been our lizard.
Oh crap! Yeah, man. Like I'd pay to see that right now. Like, yeah. Gary Oldman as the lizard. You don't even need Spider-Man in that. But I'm going to see whatever Gary Oldman does, right? Like,
Gary Oldman's the man, and his new Winston Churchill movie is going to blow my mind. But
I just saw that he's going to be Winston Churchill. Like,
Winston Churchill in November. It's going to be so good. But like that's a classic example of like, okay, you're spending $150 million on a movie of one of the most popular franchises and one of the most popular reigns of cinema currently right now, which is comic books. And you're going to do all of this, and you're going to get Andrew Garfield, who had just come off an Oscar nomination, and you're going to get Sally Field and Martin Sheen and Emma Stone and all these big names, and then you're going to get the lizard, which is one of the most beloved, for an ironic term, villains for this particular character, and then you're just going to cast a guy who's only done character bits in British movies. Like, it just it was like, guys, you were so close to perfecting the formula, and then you were like, nah.
Well, and I think casting is the great strength of the Amazing movies for the most part. I mean, with that very, very well said exception, I think their casting was their greatest strength.
Yep, I agree. But I'm shocked that they're both under the Raimi titles for you.
Well, yeah. So here's the thing. For number 3, and this is where, with my fellow nerds and I tend to differ, I'm actually going to put Spider-Man 2. And I know that everybody.
I completely agree. I thought the first one was better than 2 because the Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus left me wanting. Keep going.
Yeah, and I like Alfred Molina a lot, and I like Doc Ock a lot, and I thought he did a good job. But I thought 2. I don't know. I really don't have a reason for this. Like, I don't have a solid reason other than 2 is a good movie, 1 is a better movie. Like, I liked 1 more. And I really can't. There's not a lot of elaborating to do at this point on what. So obviously, I'm going to put number 1 at my 2 spot because that's the one that got it all going, and it's got that's one of the best cinema experiences of my life is seeing the original Spider-Man Sam Raimi movie in the theaters. Just because this is a character that I freaking loved through my childhood. And, it's hard to remember now, but it's not that long ago that we were like, will we ever see good superhero movies?
Yep.
And this was a good one.
I can identify with that. I've talked about this before where I'm the biggest Superman nerd I know. And I was so excited for Superman Returns because it was finally going to be a big budget Superman movie released in my lifetime where I could go and see it in the theaters. And I was so pissed off because it was a giant pile of garbage. And and then when Man of Steel got released, even with all of its flaws, like Marissa, my wife, can attest to this. I made her go with me to a midnight premiere of it, and she fell asleep halfway through, but she can attest to this. I cried to that movie because I was so grateful that this hollowed character that's such this big cornerstone of my life finally got a movie that was worth my time, and I got to sit in the theaters on opening night and see it and be wowed. And it's a big moment for those things that you've invested a lot of your life into.
Now, if I get another shot on this thing and you want to talk again sometime, I would love to break down the Zack Snyder movies with you, because I'm both harder on them and not as hard on them as other people. Like I think I see them differently. Anyway, that's another day. But yeah, I think and I'll give Spider-Man 1 the spot of honor, if nothing else, because of Macho Man Randy Savage as Bonesaw McGraw.
Bonesaw's ready!
What are you doing up there?
I forgot about that.
It's such a great, I don't know, like I can watch that scene. Like I could get one of those YouTube videos where they just put a scene on loop and just watch that all day and be perfectly happy.
The sweatsuit Spider-Man and Macho Man Randy Savage's Bonesaw. That's it. That's Jake's favorite moment in cinema, everybody.
Man,
that's it.
One of them. That is up there. No, and so in my number one spot, for all the reasons we've talked about, I love Homecoming. I love this movie. I think it's a great movie. I think that it is, I don't know. I think that it's launching something special, and I think that it holds its own as a Marvel film, as just a really good example of, I don't think it didn't reinvent the wheel. It didn't, it's not like Guardians of the Galaxy that showed us a completely different kind of thing than we've seen before, but it just did it right. And I thought it was a well-made movie.
It breathed absolutely necessary new life into the Avengers realm, because I'm going to be completely honest with you, Jake. A couple of episodes ago, I did a solo episode to talk about Wonder Woman, and then I did a quick riff off of my top 10 favorite comic book movies, and only one of the Avengers-type movies, maybe two, made the top 10. And it's just because so many of them are so similar and so bland and so formulaic. And I felt like Spider-Man, in order to revive where they want to go with, the Infinity War Part 37 and all that stuff, like Spider-Man, and a little bit to his credit, Ant-Man has breathed good new life into those things to give us a little bit of vitality and a little bit of newness into it. And I just thought it was necessary. And I'm grateful for Homecoming for that.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. So that's my number one. Your other question was, where do I think it's headed? So the interview came out recently where they said they're going to do villains that haven't been in movies before. Mm-hmm. So I think you have three options, and what villain they choose is going to inform what movie they do. So I'm calling it in 2017. These are my three directions these films could go.
You're hearing it first, everybody.
You got it. So I once called the entire postseason of baseball correctly, and I put it on Facebook, and this is that. I am calling it. So
take this to Vegas, put it on your odds, and make some money off of Jake's prediction.
Do it today. No, but so I think in the dark horse spot, you've got this guy called Kraven the Hunter. That a lot of your hardcore nerds want to see Kraven, and they're wrong for that, but they want to see him. Kraven has one good story, and we forget that he has all. Kraven is literally an Eastern European dirtbag in like leopard print clothes. Like he's one of the weirdest, lamest characters ever. But in the 80s, they did this story called Kraven's Last Hunt that is just freaking brilliant, man. It's like peak comic book writing. It's a whole different level, and it dares to do something different, but you're not going to see it in film, because the whole concept, like Peter Parker spends most of the story buried in a coffin trying to escape.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
No, and that's just it. You're not going to see this happen because Kraven, it ends with Kraven killing himself, having like, it's about him trying to prove that he's a better hunter than Spider-Man. And you could argue the villain wins in Kraven's Last Hunt.
That's interesting.
and then he kills himself. So it's an awesome story. You're not going to see something this dark in a Spider-Man movie. You're not going to see something that sidelines Spider-Man for so much of it. But you're going to hear Kraven tossed around a lot in the next year or so until they announce a villain. So that's so everyone knows who they're talking about. Don't expect it. I'd be shocked if Kraven happens, but he's a big enough character to the Spider-Man mythology because of that one story that I think he's a dark horse. I could see it, but I don't think so.
Fair enough.
The number two, so they've got all these little hints in it. So Mac Gargan is a guy in it. He's that dude with the scorpion neck tattoo, walking around. He's on the boat, I think. And he's also, he's the guy in the prison scene.
Yeah, they definitely alluded to him to doing something more because he both wants to get revenge on Spider-Man and two singled out Vulture in prison. Like there's clearly something more they're cooking up for him. Now, if it's for a feature role as the main villain in a standalone movie or if it's just some more supporting background noise, we don't know. But they're clearly cooking something up there.
Well, so I think Scorpion deserves, and Scorpion is his identity as a villain. He becomes the Scorpion, which is this. I think the Scorpion deserves his own movie, frankly, if you do it right. And to do it right, you have to bring in J. Jonah Jameson. And if you're going to bring in JJ, there's no point in recasting this. Just go get J.K. Simmons again. There's absolutely no reason. He nailed it the first time. He has to come back. But
I love J.K. Simmons and his freakishly buff arms for a 70-year-old man. The dude is just awesome.
Have you seen his workout pictures getting ready for the Justice League?
It's insane. He's going to be like the most ripped Commissioner Gordon ever.
Yeah, I'm totally expecting him to just rip his coat off and beat up Darkseid in that movie.
I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, sign me up. No, but so I think you could see Scorpion happen just because they spent so much time laying groundwork. But I think that may also be a red herring. The villain I want to see, and so because I want to see him, I'm going to go ahead and throw him out as the one you'll get, is this guy named Mysterio.
Yes, I was hoping you would bring that one up yes, okay, I completely agree.
Because he's both the best and worst Spider-Man villain ever, and I freaking love Mysterio.
And Mysterio just looks cool. Like I can picture Mysterio on the big screen and just stopping the movie.
Well, so you can, and that's the thing is, so Mysterio's origin is he's a special effects guy for movies who starts using his special effects skills to rob banks and stuff. And then that kind of escalates. And by the end of it, he's this insane supervillain. And you know how comic books are. They're weird. But you could do in 2017, or I guess 2019, 2020, whenever this movie's coming out, you can do so much with that in 1960s no one anticipated. And I think that Mysterio could be such a great character. Especially if you're going to continue
have a lot of prime real estate for potential in this particular arena. It's like Mysterio was great for comics because it's a fantastical arena and you can go anywhere you want with it because it's a written and drawn word. But now it's like, okay, movies are almost literally limitless, and that really that plays into his wheelhouse with the kind of concept of I'm messing with people's heads, I'm doing this outer body things, I'm doing special effects, all that stuff that's the playground for cinema. So it seems like that he could really thrive in that arena.
Well, and he could be such a cerebral villain too. And if they're going to follow this everyman hero villain theme that I desperately pray to God they keep doing, then there's not going to be a character they're going to be able to hit that as well with in a different way that grows the theme as Mysterio. Because you could talk about maybe he's I'm just spitballing here, but maybe he's this washed up practical effects guy that all of the computer animation in movies is just ruined his career. Maybe he is commentary on the proliferation of superhero movies in cinema and the lack of quality originality today. You can do so much with him and take it to so many places. I'm really
rad. If we could actually get that would be pretty rad. I would love that.
I think it would be, I also think it's the best way to take this movie to the next level where number 2 grows the themes of number 1 in a way that is organic, but accelerates things.
And see, this fits exactly with what we do here at Starving Critics. Rachel and I are all the time saying this is a podcast where we tell you exactly what to think about Hollywood and how to fix it. Boom. We just gave you the best recipe for how to make Spider-Man Homecoming 2, or whatever they're going to call it, Spider-Man Prom King, not suck.
Kevin Feige, if you're out there, Feige, however he pronounces it. Kevin, if you're out there, I work cheap. I'd take a flat $1 million to do it. So
$1 million for him to give you the story highlights of what your Spider-Man Prom King needs to be.
Yep, I'm in, man. The other thing I just want to do a quick shout out to is the best, and I was the only person in the theater who reacted to it. The best little nerd moment in that thing is Donald Glover's character that gets interrogated in the garage, you know?
Yes.
When he's talking and when Spider-Man, minor spoilers.
Spoiler.
Yeah, when he's talking to him and he's like, "Hey, I don't want these weapons in my neighborhood. I've got a nephew." I squealed a little in the theater. Like, I'm not going to act like I didn't. I'm a 31-year-old father too, and I squealed. Because his nephew is Miles Morales, the ultimate Spider-Man.
Boom.
Who, in a real meta twist, was modeled after and inspired by Donald Glover. And there was this whole thing where, like, people wanted Donald Glover to play Spider-Man, and other people were like, because it's the internet, he's got to be a white guy, which he doesn't. And then, so the guy writing Spider-Man at the time is like, yeah, he doesn't have to be a white guy. So he made this alternate Spider-Man who's half Mexican, half black.
That's awesome.
And and he's this awesome character. Miles Morales is fantastic. So I didn't
realize that Donald Glover had championed that. That's a huge deal. And now that moment is like even better for me as I'm reliving it in my head right now. Like that's like mind screw amazing is what that
right.
is.
And so when he says I've got a nephew, I'm in the back row of the theater because that's my favorite spot to sit, is right in the middle of the back row. And I just go, he's out there. And like, I'm just like all giddy.
He got a reference.
He's out there.
Yeah. Could be a thing. Yeah. That's brilliant. And that speaks to the layered details that were handled so well and efficiently in that movie.
Yeah. And efficient is a good word for it because it didn't bog the thing down.
It was all killer and no filler. And for a movie that was 2 hours and 20 minutes, it flew by.
Yeah. No joke, man.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Watching Comics podcast. Next week, Jake and I will be coming at you with some fresh takes on what we think would be a good idea for the new Watchmen miniseries. Anyway, you got a lot to look forward to on that. We're pretty excited. Be sure to hit us up on Twitter at WatchComicsPod. That's Watch Comics with an X pod. Or on Instagram at Watching Comics. Or just hit us up at watchingcomics.com. Send us some nice fan mail because you're a friendly listener. And don't forget to rate and subscribe to us on iTunes. We would love for you to give a listen and pay it forward with a nice little rating and even a review if you're feeling extra friendly. Anyway, we'll see you next week.